regardless of how you feel about guns, these are important bills for you to be aware of, for us to track in Olympia, and also for you all to understand how in some of these bills, they slip in these little lines that are designed to give bureaucrats and politicians more power down the road. And so I'm going to discuss an element of the kind of fine print aspect of these bills, but this applies to virtually every other bill in Olympia. I want you always to be looking for little lines like the ones we're going to discuss. So Democrats are saying they're concerned about ghost guns. And I do believe ghost guns are a concern. So, 3D printers are pretty accessible for Americans now. They don't cost an arm and a leg like they used to. And yes, you can 3D print components of, and you can 3D print an operational firearm. And so is that a concern? Is that something? Yeah, I guess. I think there's some elements of it, a gun that won't set off a magnetometer or whatever, a gun that somebody who's a felon might be able to print at home because they can't get a gun any other way. I'm not saying there's not room for conversation and debate about this, but these bills go much further than just trying to keep a 3D printed gun out of the hands of a dangerous criminal. So there's two bills, House Bill 2320, and this regulates the actual printing of guns and gun components. And then there's House Bill 2321. This regulates the printers themselves, and it's, I think, going to be the more concerning of the two. So before I break it down and get into the details of what makes these bills really scary, I'll just read what the NRA had to say about it, because obviously there is a 2A issue that comes into play. So NRA opposed to these bills. They say that they attempt to prohibit the private use of 3D printers and milling machines for manufacturing firearms and firearm parts that are already illegal or restricted under state law. Additionally, House Bill 2320 prohibits the possession of digital instruction files and or code related to firearm components by private individuals, which has both First, Second, and Fifth Amendment implications. They also say the title of the bill is misleading to the public. This bill isn't just about use of 3D machines and digital codes to manufacture firearms. It contains a catch-all stating that the manufacture, assembly of any regulated items by other means is also prohibited. So the NRA says rightly that these bills are about more than what they just seem at first glance. So let's dive into some of the concerning elements about it. So again, House Bill 2320 on 3D printed guns. It says it's an act related to the regulation of firearm manufacturing that involves the use of three-dimensional printers, computer-controlled milling machines, or digital firearm manufacturing codes. So here is a section of it I want you to be aware of. And again, they make it seem like, oh, we can't, this is about prohibiting people from just printing a gun at home, a ghost gun that they can use to go out and kill people, and it's very dangerous. Reasonable people can have a conversation about this issue, right? But it goes in here and it says, no person may possess digital firearm manufacturing codes for a firearm with an intent to distribute the code to a person who is not licensed to manufacture firearms, or with an intent to manufacture a firearm using a three-dimensional printer or computer numerical control milling machine. Possession of digital firearm manufacturing code for a firearm creates a rebuttable presumption of an intent to unlawfully distribute the code or manufacture a firearm in violation of this subsection. So it is saying that not just like if you illegally print a gun at home, right? That's not all it's about. If in your possession the government finds the computer code or instruction to print a gun, that is now that would also be against the law. So you could have, and I liken this to like the anarchist cookbook or handbook or whatever it is, that'll like teach you how to make a bomb and stuff. I can possess that. That's my First Amendment right. Am I going to use it to create a bomb, to hurt people in the pursuit of a political agenda? No. But I have a First Amendment right to possess that book if I'd like to have it. Hell, I can have a copy of Mein Kampf if I really want one. I don't, but I could. And you can't say I can't have that. So this is a terrifying First Amendment issue, where it says just the possession of the code or instructions to 3D print a gun or the component of a gun is against the law. In that last sentence that I just read you, possession of digital firearm manufacturing code for a firearm creates a rebuttable presumption of an intent to unlawfully distribute the code or manufacture a firearm. So rebuttable presumption, what does that mean? It means you're guilty until you prove your innocence. So let's just say, like, I don't know, that you got a bunch of codes for 3D printing, and one of them was the component for a firearm, and you have no intention of using it. Like, let's say you don't even know why it's on your computer. Guilty, unless you can prove your innocence beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a rebuttable presumption. So the possession, unless you can prove your innocence, like someone planted this on my computer to try to send me to prison, your job to prove that. So it totally flips on its head the presumption of innocence. And also, the government cannot prohibit me from having the instructions to do something that I never intend to use. Huge First Amendment issue. The second one, though, in the fine print in that, is even scarier. So House Bill 2321, regulating 3D printers. I mean, how many of you have a 3D printer at home? So many people have these nowadays. So it says, what it wants to do is it says that manufacturers of these 3D printing machines have to essentially find a way to install a kill switch that would turn the machine off if it detects that you're printing a firearm or trying to print a firearm or trying to print any component for a firearm. The manufacturers under this law are required to try to come up with some sort of kill switch that would detect that. Well, who's going to come up with and regulate that? Here's the scary part. The Attorney General, in consultation with research institutions, government agencies, or any other organization the Attorney General deems appropriate, shall adopt rules and regulations to establish standards for equipping a printer with the blocking features required by this section and for providing the attestation required by this section. The Attorney General may adopt rules and regulations for any other processes the Attorney General deems necessary to carry out the provisions of this chapter. So the manufacturers of printing machines need to find a way to have this blocking feature. How they do that is going to be approved through the Attorney General of Washington State in consultation with research institutions. The Attorney General is also going to govern the language and the attestation that these companies have to use to tell the government, yes, I did this adequately. And then that last line. You could look out for things like this in virtually any bill because it's basically a blank check. It says the Attorney General may adopt rules and regulations for any other processes the Attorney General deems necessary to carry out the provisions of this law. Well, what the hell does that mean? It can mean anything they want it to mean. They're granting the Attorney General power to oversee this law and its implementation. And the Attorney General, with that power given to him in that tiny little sentence, can do anything he deems necessary to make it so. They do that in all sorts of bills, and it's terrifying. Gives them total carte blanche, blank check to further regulate this machine that's in your house. And how the hell are they going to come up with a kill switch for this? You know how many different guns, different components for guns that you can print using the 3D printer or the milling machine? It's endless. So you'll be out there, I don't know, what's some nonchalant, print it. You're just at home using your 3D printer to print a new phone case. That's something people 3D print. Well, all of a sudden that machine shuts down by order of the Attorney General because it looked like you were trying to print a gun magazine or something. How genuinely are they going to do that? Because, I don't know, you could take all this code and run it through the machine and say, if you detect any of this code, shut it down. People will just come up with new codes and different ways to print the components of guns and all this stuff. It's impossible to regulate. That's why you can't regulate based off intent or perceived intent. You can only regulate based on actions and punish actions. If someone's not supposed to print a gun and they print a gun, well, then you can go in and do something about it. If someone uses a 3D printed gun in the commission of a crime, then you can go in and do something about it. But the idea that the government is going to be able to successfully regulate whether people in their own home, I mean, think of all the different weapons that you could create on your workbench at home. that you could use if you chose to hurt people. I mean, hell, I got a block of steak knives. I mean, how far does it go? Anyone can find the components to make a pipe bomb. And if you do that and you're caught and you got a pipe bomb, an improvised explosive device, well, there's laws against that. But what are you going to do? Make illegal any possible thing that could ever be used to create a pipe bomb? How is that possible? So this is absolute government overreach. The first one is a huge 1A issue. I mean, that would be challenged, obviously. I don't know what our state Supreme Court would do about it, but you can't punish the possession of essentially reading material. And then we're all of you that have 3D printers at home, you're okay with the Attorney General having power over an off switch on that 3D printer? If you print something they don't like? It's as wild as it gets. So it's totally beyond the 2A issue.